All right, I made this ancient human and just human cousin family tree a month or two ago. I finally have to make a change to it. There was just a preprint released, and it has to do with the last common ancestor of the Denisovans and the Neanderthals. The tree was using a model that suggested that sapiens and Denisovans, their last common ancestor was more recent, making them what we would call sister species. And that isn't what we had typically been seeing with DNA research, and this research was based off of skull morphology. So DNA is usually a stronger line of evidence. Anyways, that's what this new paper was dealing with, DNA. It was the oldest sequenced genome of any human, but it was actually of a Denisovan, and it was around 200,000 years old, maybe a little bit older. And that genome, it continued to suggest the more accepted idea that Denisovans and Neanderthals were more closely related, suggesting that these two shared a common ancestor around 600,000 years ago or so, and then our group shared a common ancestor with the ancestor of that group closer to 800,000 years ago. And there's been other evidence that had been supporting that. Dental morphology, looking at the evolutionary rates of teeth in these ancient humans. And I usually, when I talk about this stuff on here, when I discuss the ages of these divergences, I tend to lean towards the older dates. And that's because we have realized that hybridization was way more common than we used to realize. And I think that is kind of making it a little bit tougher to use our models that weren't necessarily relying on that hybridization. Something else, they did find more evidence of an ancient signal of DNA, potentially from an Asian population of Erectus or late persisting Erectus, maybe had evolved into a different species by that point. But it seems to only be in the Denisovans, suggesting that as the Denisovans arrived out there in China, they may have met up with a species that was very deeply divergent from the rest of us. Again, potentially some descendants of those early Erectus that made it out into China around 2 million years ago.